speak primarily from a Taylor Preston perspective. We have 850 employees. How we went about it, getting our needs analysis, we took 44 employees and assessed them in 2009, and we found out from those that assessed, we had 75% of our employees that we assessed were at level 3 or below on the steps, which showed a really strong need from our company perspective that we needed to have something in place. The challenge there is that Taylor Preston, prior to me being employed in 2009, had never had an HR function. We had 850 staff. We'd been operating for 19 years and grew from about 20 staff over that period of time. And when you have growth like that, you focus purely on operational, getting product out the door and not really paying too much attention to what's driving that or the changing needs of your employees. We have over 13 languages spoken on site, so very diverse culturally. Probably 85% of our employees are Pacifica Māori, a large number of English as a second language. We also get immigrants. We also bring people in on quota system. So we have a very, very diverse workforce. So how do you then get that workforce ensuring that there's understanding not only in their own language but in English, which is primarily delivered? Through some of our assessments, we found that they had literacy issues in their own language. So then you translate that into English and you have quite a large number of issues. Our training material was only in written form, so we had no way of really proving that people were understanding what was being taught. You're given a document and people nod their head saying, yep, I understand. Or even a verbal instruction, yep, I understand, and we had people popping off and doing a job totally opposite to what was being instructed. So that led to frustration from both our supervision staff and also our employees, which obviously leads to a high staff turnover. We had a large error rate, so people who you'd pop on a job thinking they could count, thinking that they could understand numbers. You have decimal place issues, so we had weights and measures issues, especially at Hellas, where we were making bacon and sausages. So you'd say to them, you want 500 grams. So what does 500 mean to an employee when they see 500 written down? When you see it, where does the decimal place go? So you had issues with putting people in jobs, getting recipes wrong where you couldn't understand decimal places, people who couldn't count, or when you're putting weights in a packet of product in a packet where you couldn't understand those. So we were looking at issues around why some of our staff weren't performing as well as perhaps they could. So it was quite easy when you come to, well, not quite easy. My challenge, I guess, getting senior managers to understand what role we play. Most people have an attitude in a workplace, we employ staff to do a job. It's not our responsibility to teach them how to read and write. So you have a challenge there of trying to get our senior managers to understand the social responsibility and also the responsibility that they have now that we have employed these people to enable them to participate actively in the workplace, to enable them to be able to do a job properly and to enable them to be able to progress within the workplace. The other challenge we have running workplace literacy programs is the time off the line. We run a very tight, narrow margin business. It's a very dynamic industry. We're a privately owned company owned by 3 families. We compete in a market against the likes of AFCO, Alliance, Silver Fern Farms, who are very big organisations. They are owned cooperatively and they don't have quite the same accountabilities that we have at Taylor Preston back to the owners of the business, who are very, very close. So we have quite a tight costing model. So there's always a conflict when you're trying to change or sell a program of literacy where you're asking the foreman to get people off the line how am I going to continue to maintain production at the rate when you're taking people out of my business? So it was quite a hard sell initially to say to our foreman, well, if Joe can understand the instructions better, he can perform his job better, he can show that he's easier to train because he understands what he's reading, your productivity is going to increase. So that was a little bit of a sell to try and get people to understand that if you improve people's participation and active participation in the workplace, the flow and effect is a more engaged workforce, and therefore you're going to get a much more happy and more productive employee. Our next challenge really is our employees themselves. You know, a lot of our people are older, you know, in their 40s to mid-50s. They have spent 40 to 50 years hiding the fact that they cannot read or write. And now you are asking them as an employer to put their hand up and say, hey, I want to participate in a communication skills program. I want to make myself vulnerable and show you and my colleagues potentially that I cannot read or write. And so that is our next challenge, is how do you remove the stigma of illiteracy? You know, you spend a long time developing a really solid memory, so when you're shown something, you create an environment, you learn from looking and doing and hiding the fact that I don't know how to spell, I don't know how to count, and I certainly don't know how to read those instructions written down in front of me. So we sold the program as purely a communication skills program. So it was not about reading and writing or being able to count. It was, how do I communicate more effectively in my workplace? How do I understand verbal instructions first? Or how do I learn something that I can take home to my family? So it was a little bit of a sell. We sort of moved people that I knew were a little bit user-friendly, who I knew also talked quite a lot, and we had a really positive start to our literacy program in the workplace. And finally you started getting people putting their hand up quietly, or they'd sneak into my office and say, hey, you know, I'd really like to have a go at this program. And you started seeing the men especially, they'd hide their books down their overalls, sneak off to class, and then within, you know, 3 or 4 weeks they were actually openly out with their books, telling people I'm off to my communication skills program class. So just 1, 2 minutes, cool. The other thing we have is the seasonality of our work, where we get people popping off and we don't know quite when they're coming back. So the outcomes we have after we'd run our program, this is the feedback from my staff: less conflict. People knew how to talk more effectively with each other, so therefore they were able to solve problems with each other in the workplace. So this is reported back from my cleaners, who are predominantly Samoan, and they were having conflicts within each other. So better communication within the team, because they were confident in themselves that they could go out there and talk about. They also talked to me about learning with their families. So they're taking books home and reading and writing with their kids. So you're starting to break the cycle of illiteracy, because you're bringing that learning environment into the home. And we've also now had progressions onto NCQA-based level 1, 2 and 3, and some of our people have gone on to a level 4 leadership development program. So for me, the positiveness of workplace literacy is really important. We have issues developing, you know, working out who's eligible and who's not, versus the needs. If I had time, I do have a little video that I just wanted to show quickly. This is the outcomes of my experience at Hellas. And we might cut it off if I'm just going over time. So this is the people. The program that we're running here at Hellas has been designed especially for the Hellas needs. So we use our standard operating procedures, or whatever the company requires our learners to know and understand to do, to enable them to do their job better. So each individual staff member has their own learning programs.
I did my first aid course, which before I would not have even thought of doing, but since I've been with Sue, once again I stepped out of my box and did a first aid course and I passed.
I left school with no qualifications. Since then, at work through Sue, I've managed to cover maths, English, reading, writing, listening skills, everything. I've got a lot better at everything I've just said. Helps me to, work a lot better, communicate with people better, do my job a lot better.
I used to find it really hard doing paperwork because I try to avoid doing it, writing it down. I prefer reading and then just pass it on. But now I do the writing, and the communications course has been helping me through all this, and it's been really wonderful.
Now I can talk to people, I can show them different ways of train them differently.
I've had maths lessons where we've done fractions and all sorts of things that I've never bothered about before. I've always gone the long way, and it's always sort of done me.
The biggest achievement, I think, with me is learning to spell. And what a great teacher. She's been very great, and otherwise I don't think I would have done anything about it.
Teach me on my English, my math, my reading, my spelling, and my accent, how to pronounce the words correctly, because I came from other country.
I joined this course, communication skill, and then I learned more in English, maths, and computer as well, which is good, fantastic.
I can communicate now to my supervisor and to my co-workers every day during our working time.
I'm learning heaps on it, and doing a report on the waste at Hellas, and hopefully with the communication that I've learnt will make the report good.
In this course, I've learnt to deal with problem solving. I've learnt to identify key aspects of the job where we can improve and make things work a lot more efficiently. So I've learnt to compile reports for management, let them know what we are doing on the floor and how we can achieve a better result at the end.
I couldn't even spell, to be honest, but since I've been coming to the class, it's been a great help. I go home so happy, teach my grandkids the same. And I've got to thank Hellas for that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much.